Dangerous Minds, Explaining Psychopathic Behaviors, written and published by Cloudy Library. Feel free to subscribe for more content. Now, let's get into the book. Introduction. In the shadowy recesses of human psychology, there exists a phenomenon both fascinating and terrifying: the psychopathic mind. Like phantoms moving unseen among us, individuals with this chilling condition navigate our world by rules alien to the empathetic majority. They are the predators in human skin, the wolves in sheep's clothing, their very existence challenging our understanding of what it means to be human. As you open these pages, prepare to embark on a harrowing journey into the abyss of the psychopathic psyche. Here, in the twilight zone between sanity and madness, we will confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of evil and the fragility of the social contracts that bind our society. This book is not for the faint of heart. We will peel back layers of deception, peer into the eyes of those who feel no remorse, and explore the biological and environmental factors that forge these dangerous minds. From the charming con artist who leaves a trail of broken lives in their wake to the cold-blooded killer whose lack of empathy chills us to the bone, we will examine the many faces of psychopathy. But beware, dear reader, for knowledge comes at a price. As we delve deeper into the psychopathic world, you may find yourself questioning the very nature of those around you. Could your charismatic boss be hiding a sinister secret? Might your charming neighbor harbor unthinkable thoughts? The lines between normalcy and deviance will blur, leaving you to wonder about the potential for darkness that resides in us all. Through cutting-edge research, chilling case studies, and expert analysis, we will attempt to understand the incomprehensible. We'll explore the neuroscience behind these aberrant minds, the evolutionary puzzles they present, and the devastating impact they have on individuals and society at large. As we pull back the curtain on these dangerous minds, we invite you to confront your own preconceptions about good and evil, sanity and madness. For in understanding the psychopath, we gain insight not only into the extremes of human behavior, but also into the very essence of what makes us human. Steel yourself, for once you've gazed into the abyss of the psychopathic mind, you may find that the abyss gazes also into you. Chapter 1. The Mask of Sanity. The bustling city street teems with life. Businessmen hurry past, briefcases in hand. A young couple shares a laugh over coffee. An elderly woman tends to her flower boxes. And there, amidst this tableau of everyday life, walks a monster. You wouldn't know it to look at him. His smile is warm, his suit impeccable. He nods politely as he passes, and you find yourself smiling back. But behind that affable exterior lurks a predator of the most dangerous kind, a psychopath. This scene plays out countless times every day across the globe. Psychopaths, those individuals devoid of empathy and conscience, move among us largely undetected. They are our neighbors, our colleagues, sometimes even our loved ones. Their ability to seamlessly blend into society, to don what renowned psychiatrist Hervey Cleckley termed the mask of sanity, is perhaps their most chilling attribute. But what lies beneath this mask? At its core, psychopathy is characterized by a profound lack of empathy, an absence of genuine emotion, and a willingness to manipulate and exploit others without remorse. These traits, however, are often concealed behind a carefully constructed facade of normalcy. Psychopaths are masters of mimicry, having learned from a young age to observe and imitate the emotional responses of those around them. They laugh at the right moments, furrow their brows in apparent concern, and can even shed tears on command. But these displays are nothing more than well-rehearsed performances, empty gestures that belie the emotional void within. The psychopath's ability to charm and manipulate is legendary. They possess an almost preternatural talent for reading people, quickly assessing their desires, insecurities, and vulnerabilities. Armed with this knowledge, they craft personas designed to appeal to their targets. To the lonely, they become the perfect companion. To the ambitious, they present themselves as a mentor or powerful ally. To the insecure, they offer validation and the promise of protection. Like chameleons, they adapt their coloration to blend seamlessly into any social environment. This chameleon-like nature makes psychopaths particularly dangerous in the professional world. The corporate landscape, with its emphasis on confidence, risk-taking, and ruthless competition, can be an ideal hunting ground for these predators. Studies have shown that psychopathic traits are overrepresented in high-level executive positions. The very qualities that make a psychopath so destructive in personal relationships, their lack of empathy, their willingness to exploit others, their grandiose sense of self-worth, can be mistaken for leadership material in the cutthroat world of business. Consider the case of John, a high-flying executive at a Fortune 500 company. Known for his charisma and bold decision-making, John rapidly climbed the corporate ladder, leaving a trail of broken promises and ruined careers in his wake. He thought nothing of taking credit for his subordinates' work, throwing loyal employees under the bus to save his own skin, or engaging in risky and unethical business practices. Yet to those above him, he presented an image of competence and success. It was only after his actions led to a catastrophic financial loss for the company that the extent of his manipulation and deceit came to light. The psychopath's talent for deception extends far beyond the boardroom. In personal relationships, they can be equally devastating. They are the charming suitors who sweep their partners off their feet, only to subject them to emotional and sometimes physical abuse. They are the con artists who gain the trust of entire communities, swindling them out of their life savings. They are the charismatic cult leaders who manipulate their followers into acts of violence or self-destruction. Take the story of Sarah, a successful attorney who fell prey to a psychopathic partner. Tom was everything she had ever dreamed of: handsome, attentive, and seemingly devoted. But as the relationship progressed, Sarah found herself increasingly isolated from friends and family. Tom's charming exterior gave way to bouts of rage and emotional manipulation. He gaslighted her, eroding her confidence and sense of reality. By the time Sarah finally broke free, she was a shell of her former self, her finances in ruins and her professional reputation tarnished. These cases beg the question: how can we protect ourselves from these human predators? The task is daunting, given their ability to blend in so effectively. However, there are subtle signs that can betray the psychopath's true nature. Pay attention to inconsistencies in their stories or behavior. Be wary of those who seem too good to be true or who rapidly push for intimacy. Notice how they treat those they perceive as beneath them or no longer useful to them. And perhaps most importantly, trust your instincts. Many victims of psychopath report having had an uneasy feeling about the person from the start, a sense that something was off, even if they couldn't quite put their finger on what it was. The evolutionary persistence of psychopathy presents a fascinating puzzle to researchers. Why would a trait so potentially destructive to social cohesion continue to exist in the human population? Some theories suggest that psychopathy may have conferred certain advantages in our ancestral environment. In times of scarcity or conflict, the ability to make cold, calculated decisions without the burden of emotional attachment or moral hesitation could have been beneficial for survival and reproduction. Another hypothesis proposes that psychopaths may serve as a form of evolutionary cheater strategy. By exploiting the generally cooperative nature of human societies, psychopaths can reap benefits without contributing to the social contract. This strategy can be successful as long as psychopaths remain a small minority within the population. If their numbers grew too large, the entire social structure would collapse, ultimately harming the psychopaths themselves. Recent research has shed light on the neurological underpinnings of psychopathy. Brain imaging studies have revealed structural and functional differences in areas associated with emotion processing, impulse control, and moral reasoning. The amygdala, a region crucial for emotional learning and response, often shows reduced activity in psychopathic individuals. This may explain their lack of fear response and their difficulty in recognizing and empathizing with emotions in others. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions like planning and impulse control, also exhibits anomalies in psychopaths. Some studies suggest that the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala is impaired, potentially disrupting the integration of emotional information into decision-making processes. This could account for the psychopath's tendency to make rash, self-serving decisions without considering the emotional consequences for themselves or others. Genetics, too, play a role in the development of psychopathy. While there is no single psychopath gene, researchers have identified several genetic variants that may contribute to psychopathic traits. However, It's crucial to note that genetics alone do not determine one's destiny. Environmental factors, particularly early childhood experiences, interact with genetic predispositions to shape an individual's personality and behavior. The nature versus nurture debate takes on a particularly chilling aspect when considering psychopathy. Can a person with genetic risk factors for psychopathy be steered towards a more prosocial path through proper nurturing? Conversely, can a child without genetic predisposition develop psychopathic traits if subjected to severe abuse or neglect? The answers to these questions have profound implications for how we approach both the prevention and treatment of psychopathy. As our understanding of psychopathy grows, so too does our ability to identify these individuals before they can cause harm. Advances in neuroimaging and genetic testing may one day allow for early detection of psychopathic tendencies. But this raises ethical quandaries of its own. How would society handle such information? Would it be used to provide early intervention and support, or would it lead to preemptive punishment and discrimination? The existence of psychopaths in our midst forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and the fragility of our social structures. It challenges our notions of free will and moral responsibility. Can we hold someone fully accountable for their actions if their brain is fundamentally incapable of empathy or remorse? Yet, given the potential for harm, can we afford not to? As we navigate this ethical minefield, we must remain vigilant. The psychopath's greatest weapon is our own denial, our unwillingness to believe that someone we know, perhaps someone we care for, could be capable of such calculated cruelty. By educating ourselves about the reality of psychopathy, by honing our ability to spot the subtle signs, we can better protect ourselves and our communities from these dangerous minds. Remember, the most chilling aspect of psychopathy is not that these individuals are so different from us, but that in many ways, they are so similar. They walk among us, hidden behind masks of normalcy, their true nature concealed by charm and mimicry. In unmasking the psychopath, we are forced to examine the very essence of what it means to be human, to question the boundaries between sanity and madness, empathy and indifference, good and evil. And in that examination, we may find that the line separating us from the monsters is far thinner than we'd like to believe. Chapter 2. The Anatomy of a Psychopathic Brain. In the shadowy recesses of the human mind, where the boundaries between normalcy and aberration blur, lies the enigma of the psychopathic brain. To truly understand the nature of these dangerous minds, we must venture into the complex labyrinth of neurons, synapses, and biochemical processes that shape human behavior. Here, in the intricate folds of gray matter, we find the key to unlocking the mysteries of psychopathy. The human brain, with its billions of neurons and trillions of connections, is a marvel of biological evolution. It is the seat of our consciousness, the wellspring of our emotions, and the arbiter of our moral judgments. But in the psychopathic brain, this delicate machinery operates in ways that deviate significantly from the norm. These deviations, subtle yet profound, give rise to the chilling behaviors that define psychopathy. At the heart of the psychopathic brain lies a fundamental disconnect between cognition and emotion. While most individuals experience a seamless integration of thought and feeling, psychopaths exhibit a stark division between these two realms. This schism is most evident in the function of the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep within the brain that plays a crucial role in processing emotions, particularly fear and anxiety. In the brain of a psychopath, the amygdala whispers where it should shout. Neuroimaging studies have consistently shown reduced activity in this region when psychopathic individuals are presented with emotionally charged stimuli. The implications of this muted response are far-reaching. Without a properly functioning amygdala, the psychopath moves through the world unencumbered by the fear and anxiety that typically guide moral behavior. They can lie without flinching, harm without hesitation, and manipulate without remorse. Consider the case of patient X, a convicted murderer whose brain scans revealed an amygdala that was 18% smaller than average. During interviews, X displayed an eerie calm when describing his crimes, his voice as steady as if he were reciting a shopping list. When shown images that would typically elicit strong emotional responses, scenes of violence, suffering, or danger, X's amygdala remained stubbornly silent. This neurological anomaly offers a chilling glimpse into the inner workings of a mind unshackled from emotional constraint. But the amygdala is just one piece of the complex puzzle that is the psychopathic brain. Another key player in this neurological drama is the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for executive functions such as planning, decision-making, and impulse control. In the psychopathic brain, the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala is often impaired, creating a dangerous disconnect between rational thought and emotional processing. This faulty wiring manifests in the psychopath's notorious impulsivity and lack of behavioral control. Without the regulatory influence of emotions like fear or guilt, the psychopath's actions are driven primarily by immediate gratification and self-interest. They may understand intellectually that certain behaviors are wrong or socially unacceptable, but this knowledge fails to translate into an emotional deterrent against such actions. The implications of this neurological disconnect extend far beyond mere impulsivity. It strikes at the very heart of what we consider human morality. Moral decision-making, long thought to be a purely rational process, is in fact deeply intertwined with our emotional responses. We feel disgust at the thought of harming an innocent, empathy for those in pain, guilt when we've done wrong. These emotions serve as powerful motivators for ethical behavior. But in the psychopathic brain, this crucial emotional component is muted or absent entirely. This absence of emotional moral reasoning is starkly illustrated in moral dilemma experiments. When presented with scenarios like the famous trolley problem, where one must decide whether to sacrifice one life to save many, most people show heightened emotional arousal and struggle with the decision. Psychopaths, on the other hand, approach such dilemmas with cold utilitarianism, untroubled by the emotional weight of sacrificing a life. Yet, it would be an oversimplification to paint the psychopathic brain as uniformly deficient. In some areas, these individuals display enhanced cognitive abilities. Many psychopaths exhibit superior language skills, particularly in the realm of verbal fluency. This linguistic prowess, combined with their lack of emotional interference, makes them particularly adept at manipulation and deceit. They can craft compelling narratives and deliver them with a conviction that belies their falsehood. The psychopath's brain also shows heightened responsiveness to rewards. Brain imaging studies have revealed increased activity in the nucleus accumbens, a region associated with pleasure and motivation, when psychopaths anticipate a reward. This hypersensitivity to reward, coupled with a diminished fear of punishment, creates a potent neurological cocktail that drives the psychopath's risk-taking and thrill-seeking behaviors. As we delve deeper into the neurochemistry of the psychopathic brain, we encounter further anomalies. Neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that facilitate communication between neurons, play a crucial role in shaping behavior and personality. In the psychopathic brain, the delicate balance of these chemicals is often askew. Serotonin, a neurotransmitter associated with mood regulation and impulse control, is frequently found at lower levels in psychopathic individuals. This deficiency may contribute to their aggressive tendencies and difficulty in delaying gratification. Conversely, levels of dopamine, the neurotransmitter linked to pleasure and motivation, are often elevated, potentially explaining the psychopath's constant need for stimulation and novelty. The role of hormones in psychopathy is another avenue of intense research. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, typically shows a blunted response in psychopathic individuals. This reduced stress reactivity may account for their cool demeanor in high-pressure situations, a trait that can be mistaken for admirable composure rather than emotional deficiency. Testosterone, the hormone associated with aggression and dominance, has also been implicated in psychopathic behavior. Some studies have found correlations between high testosterone levels and psychopathic traits, particularly in male offenders. However, the relationship is complex and likely interacts with other biological and environmental factors. As our understanding of the psychopathic brain grows, so too does the debate over nature versus nurture in the development of this condition. While the neurological abnormalities observed in psychopaths suggest a strong biological component, the role of environmental factors cannot be discounted. Early childhood experiences, particularly exposure to abuse, neglect, or trauma, can profoundly impact brain development and potentially exacerbate psychopathic tendencies. The concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections and reorganize itself throughout life, adds another layer of complexity to this debate. If the psychopathic brain is indeed wired differently, to what extent can these neural pathways be altered through intervention or therapy? Can we rewire a brain that lacks empathy or conscience? Current research into potential treatments for psychopathy focuses on this very question. Experimental therapies using neurofeedback techniques aim to train psychopathic individuals to regulate their brain activity, potentially strengthening the connections between emotional and cognitive centers. Other approaches explore the use of pharmacological interventions to address the neurochemical imbalances associated with psychopathy. However, these potential treatments raise profound ethical questions. If we develop the ability to fundamentally alter an individual's brain structure and function, do we have the right to do so? Where do we draw the line between treating a disorder and changing the essence of a person's identity? Moreover, given the potential dangers posed by psychopaths, do we have an obligation to intervene if such treatments become available? The legal implications of our growing understanding of the psychopathic brain are equally complex. As we unravel the neurological basis of psychopathic behavior, traditional notions of criminal responsibility are called into question. If an individual's actions are largely determined by their brain structure and chemistry, to what extent can they be held morally and legally accountable for their crimes? Some legal scholars argue for a neurodevelopmental model of criminal justice, where brain scans and genetic tests could be used to identify at-risk individuals and provide early intervention. Others warn of the dangers of such an approach, citing concerns about privacy, civil liberties, and the potential for discrimination based on neurological profiles. As we stand on the precipice of a new era in neuroscience, the study of the psychopathic brain forces us to confront fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, free will, and moral responsibility. It challenges our understanding of what it means to be human and blurs the lines between normality and pathology. The psychopathic brain, with its eerie calm in the face of violence and its cold calculation in place of empathy, serves as a dark mirror to our own minds. It reveals the fragility of the neural networks that govern our emotions and moral reasoning, reminding us that the capacity for empathy and conscience, traits we often take for granted, are in fact remarkable achievements of human evolution. Yet, as we peer into the abyss of the psychopathic mind, we must be cautious not to lose sight of our own humanity. The danger lies not just in the potential harm caused by psychopaths themselves, but in how we as a society choose to respond to this knowledge. Will we use our understanding of the psychopathic brain to foster compassion and develop more effective interventions? Or will we allow it to fuel fear and discrimination? As we continue to unravel the mysteries of the psychopathic brain, we walk a fine line between scientific progress and ethical peril. Each new discovery brings us closer to understanding the biological roots of evil, but it also forces us to question our most deeply held beliefs about human nature. In the end, the study of these dangerous minds may reveal as much about ourselves as it does about the psychopaths among us. Chapter 3. The Psychopath Toolkit: Manipulation and Control. In the shadowy realm of psychopathy, where empathy is absent and conscience is silent, a different set of tools takes center stage. These are not the implements of physical violence, though those too may play a role. Instead, the psychopath's most potent weapons are psychological, wielded with a precision that would be admirable if it weren't so destructive. This is the Psychopath Toolkit, a collection of manipulative techniques honed to perfection, designed to control, exploit, and ultimately destroy their targets. At the heart of the psychopath's arsenal lies a profound understanding of human nature. It's an understanding not born of empathy or emotional connection, but of cold, calculated observation. From an early age, psychopaths learn to watch and mimic the emotional responses of those around them. They become students of human behavior, cataloging weaknesses, desires, and insecurities with the dispassionate eye of a scientist studying lab rats. This knowledge becomes the foundation upon which their manipulative strategies are built. Perhaps the most insidious tool in the psychopath's kit is gaslighting, a form of psychological manipulation so subtle and pervasive that its victims often don't realize they're being targeted until it's too late. The term, derived from the 1938 stage play Gaslight, refers to a systematic attempt to erode a person's reality, to make them question their own perceptions, memories, and sanity. Consider the case of Sarah, a successful marketing executive who fell prey to a psychopathic colleague we'll call Tom. At first, Tom's manipulations were small, almost imperceptible. He would move items on Sarah's desk, then feign confusion when she mentioned it. In meetings, he would subtly misquote her previous statements, making her appear forgetful or inconsistent. When Sarah confronted him, Tom would express concern, suggesting gently that perhaps she was working too hard and her memory was suffering. As the gaslighting escalated, Sarah found herself in a nightmarish realm where nothing felt certain. Tom would make plans with her, then deny they had ever spoken. He would praise her work in private, then criticize it harshly in front of superiors, leaving Sarah bewildered and defensive. He even manipulated email timestamps to make it appear Sarah was missing deadlines. Gradually, Sarah's confidence eroded. She began to doubt her own competence, her memories, her very grasp on reality. This self-doubt made her increasingly reliant on Tom, who was always ready with a sympathetic ear and offers of help. Sarah's story illustrates the insidious power of gaslighting. By systematically undermining their victims' sense of reality, psychopaths create a world where they alone can be trusted, where their narrative becomes the only truth. It's a form of psychological colonization, with the psychopath slowly but surely taking control of their victims' mental landscape. But gaslighting is just one tool in the psychopath's extensive kit. Another powerful technique is love bombing, a manipulative seduction strategy that overwhelms the target with affection, attention, and adoration. In the initial stages of a relationship, whether romantic, professional, or platonic, the psychopath showers their prey with praise, gifts, and seeming devotion. They mirror the victim's interests and desires, presenting themselves as the perfect partner, friend, or mentor. This onslaught of positive attention is intoxicating. The victim feels special, cherished, understood in a way they've never experienced before. What they don't realize is that this is merely the bait in an elaborate trap. Once the psychopath has secured their target's trust and affection, the love bombing gives way to devaluation and discard. The once adoring partner becomes cold, critical, even cruel. The whiplash between adoration and rejection leaves the victim disoriented and desperate to regain the psychopath's approval. The art of the con is another area where psychopaths excel. Their lack of empathy, combined with their keen understanding of human desires and weaknesses, makes them masterful deceivers. They craft elaborate false personas, weaving lies with threads of truth to create tapestries of deception that can fool even the most discerning individuals. Take the case of Dr. Thomas Redmond, a charismatic figure who swept into a small Midwestern town claiming to be a world-renowned oncologist with groundbreaking cancer treatments. Redmond's charm and apparent expertise won over local medical professionals and patients alike. He spoke convincingly of cutting-edge therapies, dropped names of famous colleagues, and shared heartwarming stories of lives he'd saved. For months, Redmond saw patients, prescribed treatments, and became a beloved figure in the community. It was only when a skeptical nurse began to dig into his background that the facade crumbled. Dr. Redmond was neither a doctor nor named Thomas Redmond. He was a convicted felon with a long history of medical fraud, leaving a trail of false hope and empty bank accounts across several states. The Redmond case demonstrates the psychopath's ability to exploit our deepest hopes and fears. In a world where we desperately want to believe in miracle cures and benevolent authorities, the skilled psychopath can craft a persona that fits our desires like a glove. Their lies are seductive not just because of the psychopath's skill, but because of our own willingness to believe. Another potent tool in the psychopath's arsenal is emotional vampirism. Like their mythical counterparts, psychopaths feed off the emotional energy of others. They provoke intense emotional responses, love, fear, anger, jealousy, and then bask in the chaos they've created. This serves multiple purposes. It provides the stimulation that many psychopaths crave, it disorients and weakens their victims, and it allows the psychopath to present themselves as the calm, rational party amidst the emotional storm they've secretly orchestrated. This emotional manipulation often takes the form of triangulation, where the psychopath introduces a third party into the dynamic to provoke jealousy, insecurity, or competition. In romantic relationships, This might involve flirting with others or constantly comparing their partner unfavorably to an ex. In professional settings, it could manifest as playing colleagues against each other, fostering an atmosphere of rivalry and mistrust. The Psychopath's toolkit also includes an array of linguistic weapons, wielded with precision to control narratives and manipulate perceptions. They are masters of verbal sleight of hand, using techniques like word salad, a confusing mix of circular reasoning, non sequiturs, and projection, to disorient their targets and avoid accountability. When confronted, they may employ DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender, a strategy where they deny wrongdoing, attack their accuser, and then position themselves as the true victim. Psychopaths are also adept at exploiting cognitive biases and logical fallacies. They may use the sunk cost fallacy to keep a victim invested in a toxic relationship, or exploit confirmation bias by feeding their target information that supports a false narrative. Their arguments often rely on false dichotomies, straw man representations of opposing views, and appeals to emotion rather than reason. One of the most chilling aspects of the psychopath's manipulative toolkit is their ability to identify and exploit attachment styles and childhood wounds. Like predators singling out the weakest member of a herd, psychopaths have an uncanny knack for spotting vulnerability. Those with anxious attachment styles, stemming from inconsistent parenting in childhood, may be particularly susceptible to the psychopath's alternating warmth and coldness. Individuals with a history of abuse may find their boundaries eroded by a psychopath who knows just how to push past their defenses. Consider the case of Emma, a successful author with a history of childhood emotional neglect. When she met David at a literary event, she was immediately drawn to his charm and apparent depth. David, a psychopath with a keen eye for vulnerability, recognized Emma's unmet childhood needs for validation and nurturing. He positioned himself as the supportive, understanding partner she'd always longed for. Over time, David systematically undermined Emma's other relationships, isolating her from friends and family. He subtly criticized her work, chipping away at her confidence. When Emma tried to assert boundaries, David would weaponize her past, accusing her of pushing him away, just like your cold, unloving parents did. Caught in this web of manipulation, Emma found herself emotionally dependent on the very person who was destroying her. The puppet master's strings, once attached, can be fiendishly difficult to sever. Psychopaths employ a variety of techniques to maintain control over their victims. Intermittent reinforcement, unpredictable cycles of reward and punishment, creates a trauma bond, keeping the victim hopeful for the next moment of kindness amidst a sea of cruelty. Psychopaths may also use threats, both veiled and overt, to keep their targets in line. These threats might be physical, but are more often social or emotional. Threats to reveal secrets, ruin reputations, or withdraw love and support. Another insidious control tactic is ambient abuse, a form of emotional violence that pervades the entire environment. This might involve constant criticism, subtle put-downs, or a persistent atmosphere of tension and walking on eggshells. Like a frog in slowly boiling water, victims of ambient abuse often don't realize how toxic their situation has become until they're already deeply trapped. The psychopath's manipulative tactics extend into the digital realm as well. Social media provides new avenues for gaslighting, love bombing, and triangulation. A psychopath might use public posts to create a false narrative about their relationship, subtly undermine their victim, or provoke jealousy. They may engage in hoovering, named after the vacuum cleaner brand, using digital means to suck their victim back into the relationship after a breakup or period of distance. In the professional world, psychopaths may employ a tactic known as upward bullying, where they manipulate organizational structures and politics to undermine and control those in positions of authority over them. They might use strategic misinformation, coalition building, and exploitation of workplace policies to neutralize threats to their position and advance their own agenda. For those who find themselves caught in a psychopath's web, breaking free can be a Herculean task. The first step is often the hardest, recognizing the abuse for what it is. The psychopath's manipulations are so subtle, so insidious, that many victims struggle to trust their own perceptions. Education is key. Understanding the tactics psychopaths use can help victims begin to disentangle reality from the false narrative they've been fed. Once the manipulation is recognized, the next step is to reclaim one's sense of self. This often involves reconnecting with friends and family from whom the victim has been isolated, seeking professional help to process the trauma, and slowly rebuilding self-esteem and boundaries. For many victims, going no contact with their abuser is crucial for healing, though this can be challenging when children, shared workplaces, or other complicating factors are involved. The path to recovery is rarely linear. Many victims describe a fog lifting as they begin to see the psychopath's manipulations clearly, followed by a roller coaster of emotions, anger at the abuse, shame at having been deceived, grief for the relationship they thought they had. Healing takes time, patience, and often professional support. As we unravel the intricacies of the Psychopath's toolkit, we're confronted with uncomfortable truths about human nature. The very traits that make us human, our capacity for trust, our desire for connection, our ability to love, are the vulnerabilities that psychopaths exploit. Their manipulative tactics work precisely because they tap into fundamental aspects of human psychology and social behavior. Yet, understanding these tactics serves a dual purpose. It not only helps us protect ourselves and others from psychopathic manipulation, but also illuminates the complex dynamics of human relationships and social interactions. By studying the extreme manipulations of psychopaths, we gain insight into more subtle forms of influence and persuasion that permeate our daily lives. The Psychopath's toolkit, with its array of manipulative techniques, stands as a dark mirror to our own social strategies. It forces us to confront the fine line between influence and manipulation, between persuasion and control. In a world increasingly mediated by digital technologies and shaped by sophisticated marketing and political messaging, the ability to recognize and resist manipulation becomes ever more crucial. As we close this exploration of the psychopath's manipulative arsenal, we're left with a paradox. The very knowledge that allows us to defend against these tactics also risks making us overly suspicious, potentially seeing manipulation where none exists. The challenge, then, is to foster awareness without succumbing to paranoia, to cultivate healthy skepticism while maintaining our capacity for trust and connection. In the end, the most powerful defense against psychopathic manipulation may not be suspicion or withdrawal, but rather the cultivation of genuine, empathetic connections with others. For it is in these authentic relationships, built on mutual respect and understanding, that we find the strength to recognize and resist the dark allure of the psychopath's deceptive charms. Chapter 4. Psychopaths in Power, From Boardrooms to Battlefields. In the corridors of power, where decisions shape the fate of nations and corporations, a chilling truth lurks in the shadows. Psychopaths are often drawn to positions of authority like moths to a flame. The very traits that define psychopathy, lack of empathy, manipulative charm, ruthless ambition, can become perverse assets in the climb to the top. From corporate boardrooms to political offices, from religious pulpits to military command centers, the presence of psychopaths in leadership roles poses a profound threat to the fabric of society. The corporate world, with its emphasis on cutthroat competition and bottom-line results, provides fertile ground for psychopathic individuals to flourish. Studies suggest that the prevalence of psychopathic traits among CEOs and high-level executives is significantly higher than in the general population. This phenomenon, often referred to as corporate psychopathy, raises disturbing questions about the nature of success in modern capitalism. Consider the case of Edwin Paulson, the charismatic CEO of a multinational tech company. On the surface, Paulson appeared to be the epitome of visionary leadership. His bold strategies and infectious confidence propelled the company to new heights, earning him accolades from industry analysts and financial media alike. Employees spoke of his uncanny ability to inspire loyalty and drive performance. But beneath the glossy exterior lay a darker reality. Those who worked closely with Paulson told a different story, one of ruthless manipulation, callous disregard for employee well-being, and an insatiable appetite for power and control. He would pit team members against each other, fostering a toxic environment of competition and mistrust. Whistleblowers who attempted to expose unethical practices found themselves swiftly discredited and ousted. Meanwhile, Paulson's risk-taking behavior, unchecked by normal ethical constraints, led the company into increasingly dubious territory, from data privacy violations to large-scale financial fraud. The Paulson case illustrates how psychopathic traits can be mistaken for leadership qualities in the corporate sphere. Charm and confidence are interpreted as charisma. Lack of empathy is seen as necessary toughness. Manipulative behaviors are lauded as strategic brilliance. The psychopath's ability to make bold, seemingly fearless decisions unencumbered by emotional considerations can lead to short-term success that obscures long-term devastation. This dynamic extends beyond individual corporations to shape entire industries. In the wake of financial crises, scholars have pointed to the prevalence of psychopathic traits in the banking and investment sectors as a contributing factor. The reckless risk-taking, fraudulent practices, and callous disregard for societal impact that characterize these meltdowns bear the hallmarks of psychopathic behavior writ large on the global economy. The political arena, with its blend of public adoration and behind-the-scenes power plays, proves equally alluring to psychopathic individuals. History is replete with examples of leaders whose charismatic public personas masked a capacity for unspeakable cruelty and manipulation. From dictators who rose to power on waves of populist fervor to seemingly benign politicians who systematically undermined democratic institutions, the impact of psychopathy in politics can be devastating on a national and even global scale. The case of Senator Marcus Blackwood provides a chilling illustration of psychopathy in the political sphere. Blackwood's rise to prominence was meteoric, fueled by his magnetic personality and ability to tell people exactly what they wanted to hear. He positioned himself as a champion of the common man, railing against corruption and promising sweeping reforms. Once in office, however, Blackwood's true nature emerged. He masterfully played different factions against each other, creating chaos that only he could seemingly resolve. His legislative agenda was a study in self-serving policies thinly veiled as public interest. When scandals emerged, ranging from financial improprieties to sexual misconduct, Blackwood deployed an arsenal of psychopathic tactics, gaslighting the public, attacking his accusers, and positioning himself as the victim of a vast conspiracy. Perhaps most disturbingly, Blackwood exhibited an uncanny ability to incite and manipulate public emotion. He could bring crowds to a frenzy with speeches that played on fear and resentment, while privately expressing contempt for the very supporters he claimed to champion. His lack of genuine ideological commitment allowed him to shift positions effortlessly, always aligning himself with whatever stance offered the most personal benefit. The Blackwood scenario underscores the unique dangers posed by psychopaths in political power. Their ability to manipulate public opinion, combined with access to the levers of state authority, creates a potent and volatile mix. Democratic systems, built on assumptions of good faith and ethical behavior, can be particularly vulnerable to psychopathic exploitation. Religious institutions, paradoxically, can also provide a haven for psychopathic individuals seeking power and influence. The role of spiritual leader, often imbued with unquestioned moral authority and intimate access to followers' lives, can be intoxicating to those with psychopathic tendencies. Cult leaders represent an extreme manifestation of this phenomenon, but even mainstream religious organizations are not immune. The story of Reverend Ephraim Goodwin offers a stark example of psychopathy cloaked in spiritual garb. Goodwin built a thriving megachurch based on his charismatic sermons and claims of divine inspiration. His followers saw him as a direct conduit to the divine, hanging on his every word and obeying his directives without question. Behind the scenes, Goodwin exploited this devotion mercilessly. He manipulated followers into donating vast sums, often pushing them to financial ruin. He used his spiritual authority to control every aspect of his congregants' lives, from their relationships to their career choices. Those who questioned his authority found themselves branded as heretics, cut off from their community and family. Most insidiously, Goodwin used his position to satisfy his own dark appetites. He sexually abused numerous followers, using spiritual coercion and the threat of divine punishment to ensure their silence. When accusations finally surfaced, Goodwin deployed classic psychopathic tactics, gaslighting his accusers, rallying his supporters to attack the victims, and portraying himself as persecuted by dark forces. The Goodwin case highlights how psychopaths can exploit the human need for meaning and belonging. In the context of religious devotion, the psychopath's manipulative tactics find particularly fertile ground. The desire for spiritual transcendence can blind followers to red flags, while the hierarchical nature of many religious organizations can insulate leaders from accountability. Even the military, an institution built on notions of honor and sacrifice, is not immune to the influence of psychopathic individuals. The structured hierarchy and emphasis on unquestioning obedience can create an environment where psychopathic traits are mistaken for strong leadership. In times of war, the ability to make ruthless decisions without emotional hesitation may even be seen as an asset. Consider the case of Colonel Victor Ramirez, a decorated officer whose tactical brilliance was matched only by his brutality. Ramirez's units were known for their effectiveness in combat, achieving objectives that others deemed impossible. But reports from those who served under him painted a disturbing picture. Reckless disregard for casualties, both enemy and friendly, sadistic punishment for perceived infractions, and a cult-like devotion demanded from his subordinates. Ramirez's lack of empathy allowed him to send soldiers on suicide missions without a second thought. His manipulative charm enabled him to deflect investigations into war crimes committed under his command. Perhaps most chillingly, Ramirez seemed to revel in the chaos and destruction of war, viewing it as a grand game with human lives as mere pawns. The Ramirez example illustrates the complex ethical questions raised by psychopathy in military contexts. In the fog of war, the line between necessary tactical detachment and psychopathic indifference to human life can become blurred. The very traits that make psychopaths dangerous in civilian life, lack of fear, ability to detach from emotional consequences, manipulative charisma, can become perversely advantageous in combat situations. This brings us to an uncomfortable paradox. In certain high-stress, high-stakes environments, psychopathic traits may confer short-term advantages. The corporate psychopath who can make ruthless decisions without emotional hesitation. The political psychopath unburdened by empathy when calculating policy trade-offs. The military leader able to send troops into danger without psychological turmoil. In a world that often seems to reward cold calculation over compassion, psychopaths may find themselves uniquely positioned to seize power. But this advantage comes at a tremendous cost, both to individuals and to society at large. The corporate psychopath may drive short-term profits, but at the expense of fostering a toxic work culture and engaging in unsustainable practices. The political psychopath may excel at gaining power, but their self-serving governance erodes the very foundations of democratic society. The psychopathic military leader may win battles, but at the cost of atrocities that haunt survivors and tarnish national honor. Moreover, the presence of psychopaths in power creates a corrosive effect on institutional culture. Their behavior sets a toxic precedent, normalizing manipulation and callousness as acceptable leadership traits. This can create a feedback loop where organizational systems evolve to reward psychopathic behavior, attracting more such individuals to positions of power. The question then becomes, how do we safeguard our institutions against psychopathic infiltration? Traditional background checks and interviews often prove ineffective, as psychopaths are masters of presenting a carefully crafted public image. Some organizations have begun implementing more sophisticated screening tools, including psychological assessments designed to detect psychopathic traits. However, these methods are far from foolproof and raise their own ethical concerns about privacy and fairness. Another approach focuses on creating institutional cultures and structures that are inherently resistant to psychopathic manipulation. This might involve fostering genuine transparency and accountability, strengthening ethical oversight mechanisms, and cultivating environments where empathy and collaboration are truly valued over ruthless individual achievement. Some proponents argue for flatter organizational structures and decentralized decision-making processes, which may be less attractive to psychopaths seeking concentrated power. Education also plays a crucial role. By raising awareness about psychopathic behaviors and manipulation tactics, we can create a more informed populace better equipped to recognize and resist such individuals in positions of power. This extends to teaching emotional intelligence and ethical reasoning skills from an early age, helping to inoculate future generations against psychopathic influence. However, these preventative measures face significant challenges. The very institutions that need reform are often controlled by individuals who benefit from the status quo. Moreover, the complexity of modern global systems means that psychopaths in power can often insulate themselves from consequences, using wealth, influence, and legal maneuvering to evade accountability. There's also a deeper, more troubling question to confront. To what extent are our current power structures inherently attractive to psychopathic individuals? Do the incentives and values of our political and economic systems inadvertently select for psychopathic traits? Addressing this would require a fundamental reevaluation of what we as a society consider successful leadership. As we grapple with these questions, it's crucial to avoid falling into overly simplistic narratives. Not every successful CEO, charismatic politician, or strict military leader is a psychopath. The danger lies in both directions. Failing to recognize psychopathy in power can lead to tremendous harm, but seeing it where it doesn't exist can breed unnecessary paranoia and undermine trust in vital institutions. The reality is that psychopaths in power represent a complex, multifaceted challenge to society. Their presence in influential positions is both a symptom and a cause of deeper systemic issues. Addressing this challenge requires a nuanced approach that combines individual accountability, institutional reform, and broader societal reflection. Perhaps most importantly, confronting the issue of psychopaths in power calls us to reaffirm and strengthen our commitment to fundamental human values. In a world where callousness can masquerade as strength and manipulation as charisma, we must actively cultivate and reward genuine empathy, ethical behavior, and concern for the greater good. The stakes could not be higher. Left unchecked, psychopaths in positions of power can inflict immense harm, from ruined companies and shattered lives to large-scale human rights abuses and environmental devastation. Their influence corrodes the trust that is essential for functional societies and institutions. And yet, in facing this challenge, we have an opportunity for profound positive change. By developing better methods to identify and prevent psychopathic individuals from attaining power, we can create more ethical, sustainable, and genuinely prosperous institutions. By fostering cultures that truly value empathy and collaboration, we can build a society more resistant to manipulation and more capable of addressing complex global challenges. The path forward is neither simple nor easy. It requires sustained effort, courage to confront uncomfortable truths, and a willingness to re-examine deeply ingrained assumptions about power and success. But in doing so, we reclaim something essential: the idea that those who lead us, whether in business, politics, religion, or the military, should be guided by a genuine concern for human welfare rather than a cold calculus of self-interest. As we close this exploration of psychopaths in power, we're left with a profound challenge. In boardrooms and political chambers, in places of worship and on battlefields, the struggle between genuine leadership and psychopathic exploitation continues to shape our world. Our task is to face this reality clear-eyed, to strengthen our defenses against manipulation, and to work tirelessly towards a future where power is a tool for collective flourishing rather than a weapon of self-aggrandizement. Chapter 5. Treatment and Containment. Can the beast be tamed? In the depths of secure psychiatric facilities, behind the bars of maximum security prisons, and within the sterile confines of research laboratories, a question echoes with chilling persistence. Can the psychopathic mind be tamed? This query, fraught with ethical dilemmas and practical challenges, stands at the frontier of our understanding of these dangerous minds. As we delve into the realm of treatment and containment for psychopathy, we find ourselves navigating a landscape as complex and treacherous as the psychopathic mind itself. The notion of treating psychopathy has long been met with skepticism in the mental health community. Traditional therapeutic approaches, built on foundations of empathy, insight, and emotional connection, often falter when confronted with the unique challenges posed by psychopathic individuals. The very traits that define psychopathy, lack of empathy, absence of remorse, manipulative tendencies, seem to render conventional therapy not just ineffective, but potentially counterproductive. Consider the case of Dr. Eleanor Hastings, a renowned psychotherapist who specialized in treating personality disorders. When she first encountered Michael, a diagnosed psychopath with a history of fraud and violence, she was confident that her decades of experience would allow her to make a breakthrough. Michael was charming, articulate, and seemed eager to engage in therapy. But as the months wore on, Dr. Hastings found herself caught in an intricate web of manipulation. Michael used the therapy sessions not as a tool for self-improvement, but as a training ground to hone his manipulative skills. He learned the language of therapy, expertly mimicking emotional growth and insight. He studied Dr. Hastings herself, identifying her vulnerabilities and exploiting them with surgical precision. What was intended as treatment became, in Michael's hands, a masterclass in psychopathic manipulation. The Hastings-Michael case underscores a grim reality. Traditional psychotherapy may not only fail to help psychopaths, but it might inadvertently sharpen their manipulative abilities. By providing them with deeper insight into human emotions and social dynamics, we risk equipping them with more sophisticated tools to exploit others. This sobering realization has led many in the field to question whether psychopathy can be treated at all, or if containment is the only viable option for protecting society. Yet, the stakes are too high to abandon the search for effective interventions. Psychopaths, though a small percentage of the general population, are responsible for a disproportionate amount of social harm. From white-collar crimes that devastate economies to violent offenses that leave lasting trauma, the impact of psychopathic behavior ripples through society in countless destructive ways. If there's even a glimmer of hope for effective treatment, it must be pursued. This imperative has led researchers to explore innovative approaches that sidestep the limitations of traditional therapy. One promising avenue is neurofeedback, a technique that allows individuals to observe and potentially regulate their own brain activity in real time. Early studies have shown some success in using neurofeedback to increase activity in brain regions associated with empathy and impulse control, areas typically underactive in psychopathic individuals. Dr. Amelia Chin's work at the Neurobehavioral Institute has been at the forefront of this research. Using advanced brain imaging technology, Dr. Chin and her team have developed protocols that target specific neural pathways implicated in psychopathic behavior. Participants in her studies, all diagnosed psychopaths, undergo intensive neurofeedback training sessions. They learn to modulate their brain activity, gradually strengthening neural connections associated with empathy and emotional regulation. The results, while preliminary, offer a glimmer of hope. Some participants show measurable increases in empathic responses and improved impulse control. However, the long-term efficacy of these changes remains uncertain. Critics argue that teaching psychopaths to better mimic empathy without actually feeling it could make them more dangerous, not less. The ethical implications of directly manipulating brain function also raise thorny questions about autonomy and the nature of the self. Another frontier in psychopathy treatment involves pharmacological interventions. Researchers are exploring whether certain medications might help address the neurochemical imbalances associated with psychopathic traits. Drugs that modulate serotonin and dopamine levels, for instance, have shown some promise in reducing impulsive and aggressive behaviors. The case of Alex Mercer, a participant in a groundbreaking pharmacological trial, illustrates both the potential and the pitfalls of this approach. Mercer, a diagnosed psychopath with a history of violent outbursts, showed remarkable improvement while on a carefully calibrated regimen of mood stabilizers and antipsychotics. His aggressive tendencies diminished, and he reported experiencing empathic feelings for the first time in his life. However, the side effects were severe, ranging from cognitive dulling to profound lethargy. More disturbingly, once off the medication, Mercer's psychopathic traits resurged with even greater intensity. This case highlights the complex challenge of addressing psychopathy through pharmacology. How do we balance symptom management with quality of life and long-term efficacy? As research into neurological and pharmacological interventions continues, some experts argue for a more holistic approach to managing psychopathy. This perspective acknowledges that while we may not be able to cure psychopathy, we can potentially teach psychopathic individuals to better navigate society in less destructive ways. Dr. Robert Hare, a pioneer in psychopathy research, has advocated for programs that focus on enlightened self-interest. The idea is to appeal to the psychopath's innate self-centeredness, demonstrating how prosocial behavior can be personally beneficial. By framing ethical conduct as a means to achieve their own goals, whether that's avoiding incarceration, achieving professional success, or maintaining a facade of normalcy, we might incentivize psychopaths to modulate their more destructive tendencies. This approach has shown some success in correctional settings. The Mendota Juvenile Treatment Center in Wisconsin, for instance, has implemented a program based on these principles. Young offenders with psychopathic traits are taught to recognize that their harmful behaviors ultimately work against their own interests. They learn alternative strategies to achieve their goals without resorting to violence or manipulation. While not a cure, this method has demonstrated a significant reduction in recidivism rates among participants. However, critics argue that teaching psychopaths to better blend into society without addressing their fundamental lack of empathy is a dangerous gambit. Are we simply creating more sophisticated predators? The ethical implications of such an approach are profound, forcing us to grapple with questions of authenticity, rehabilitation, and the very nature of moral behavior. As we navigate these murky waters of treatment and rehabilitation, the challenge of containment looms large. For those psychopathic individuals who pose an immediate threat to society, particularly those with a history of violence, containment often becomes the primary focus. Yet, even this seemingly straightforward goal is fraught with complexities. The criminal justice system, our primary mechanism for containing dangerous individuals, struggles to effectively manage psychopathic offenders. Traditional incarceration methods often prove inadequate. Psychopaths are more likely to violate prison rules, manipulate staff and other inmates, and continue their criminal activities even while behind bars. They're also more likely to reoffend upon release, their time in prison serving as a breeding ground for more sophisticated criminal strategies rather than as a deterrent. Specialized containment facilities, designed with the unique challenges of psychopathic offenders in mind, offer one potential solution. These facilities employ staff trained in recognizing and countering psychopathic manipulation tactics. They implement strict behavioral management protocols and limit opportunities for psychopaths to exert influence over others. While promising, such facilities are resource-intensive and raise concerns about long-term confinement and human rights. The case of Howard Reinhardt, a psychopathic offender with a string of violent crimes to his name, illustrates the containment dilemma. In a standard prison environment, Reinhardt was a constant source of disruption. He manipulated other inmates into doing his bidding, charmed staff members into granting him special privileges, and continued to orchestrate criminal activities from behind bars. When transferred to a specialized containment unit, Reinhardt's ability to cause harm was significantly curtailed. However, the intensive resources required to maintain this level of containment, coupled with concerns about the ethics of long-term isolation, make such solutions difficult to implement on a large scale. The challenge of containment extends beyond the prison walls. How do we manage psychopathic individuals who, while dangerous, have not committed crimes serious enough to warrant long-term incarceration? How do we balance public safety with individual rights? These questions become particularly thorny when we consider the potential for early intervention in young people showing psychopathic traits. Early identification and intervention programs aim to address psychopathic tendencies before they manifest in serious criminal behavior. These initiatives focus on children and adolescents who display callous unemotional traits, often considered precursors to adult psychopathy. Through intensive therapy, social skills training, and family interventions, these programs hope to alter the developmental trajectory of potential psychopaths. The ethical implications of such early intervention are profound. On one hand, if we can prevent the development of full-blown psychopathy, we could potentially spare countless victims and give these young people a chance at a more pro-social life. On the other hand, the risk of false positives, labeling, and treating children who may not go on to develop psychopathy raises serious concerns about stigmatization and unnecessary intervention. The case of Tyler Jensen brings these ethical quandaries into sharp relief. Identified at age 12 as having high levels of callous unemotional traits, Tyler was enrolled in an intensive intervention program. The program involved individual therapy, family counseling, and close monitoring of his behavior at school and home. By most measures, the intervention was a success. Tyler's antisocial behaviors decreased, and he showed improvements in empathy and impulse control. But at what cost? Tyler, now an adult, speaks of feeling branded by his early diagnosis. The intensive scrutiny of his childhood left him feeling like a ticking time bomb, rather than a normal kid. While grateful for the skills he learned, He questions whether the intervention was truly necessary or if he simply would have outgrown his troubling traits naturally. As we grapple with these challenges of treatment and containment, we must also confront a more fundamental question. To what extent is psychopathy truly immutable? The traditional view of psychopathy as a fixed, lifelong condition is being challenged by emerging research on neuroplasticity and the potential for change even in adult brains. Could it be that, with the right interventions at the right time, even the most hardened psychopath might develop genuine empathy and conscience? This possibility, however remote, forces us to re-evaluate our approach to psychopathy. If change is possible, even in small degrees, do we have an ethical obligation to pursue treatment rather than mere containment? How do we balance this potential for rehabilitation with the very real risks posed by psychopathic individuals? The path forward in treating and containing psychopathy is neither clear nor easy. It requires a delicate balance of scientific innovation, ethical consideration, and pragmatic realism. We must continue to push the boundaries of neurological and psychological research, seeking new insights into the psychopathic mind. At the same time, we must strengthen our systems of containment, developing more effective strategies to protect society from those psychopaths who pose an active threat. Crucially, we must also broaden our focus beyond the individual psychopath to examine the societal factors that allow psychopathy to flourish. By creating cultures that truly value empathy, collaboration, and social responsibility, we can potentially reduce the success rate of psychopathic behaviors and diminish their appeal. As we stand at this crossroads of science, ethics, and social policy, the stakes could not be higher. Our ability to effectively address the challenge of psychopathy will shape not just individual lives, but the very fabric of our society. The road ahead is long and fraught with difficult questions, but it is a journey we must undertake. For in learning to contain and potentially treat the beast of psychopathy, we may ultimately learn profound truths about the nature of empathy, morality, and what it means to be human. The quest to tame the psychopathic mind continues, a testament to both the complexity of the human brain and the resilience of the human spirit. While a complete cure for psychopathy may remain elusive, every step forward in our understanding brings us closer to a world where the devastating impact of these dangerous minds can be mitigated. In this endeavor, we find not just the possibility of containing a threat, but the potential to unlock deeper insights into the very essence of human connection and moral behavior.